Good evening, everyone. In the front row, we have timekeepers who will keep the members of the panel and the candidates on target. And in order of ballot position for opening statements, the first opening statement tonight is from Lee Wu. 1 minute, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming up for this great event. My name is Li Wu Hang. First, I'm an experienced Board of Education member. I'm the chairperson for the Technology Committee, and I'm the chairperson for the Transportation Committee. And I love serve community. I'm glad I'm choosing to be the trustee for the Mayor's Charity Fund, which gave out a huge gala last week. At the same time, I founded a big community program as United Chinese American Association of New Jersey, which have more than 150 organization members. Professionally, I'm an attorney, and I was licensed to practice law in New Jersey, New York, and federal court for 14 years. Before I became a lawyer, I was a scientist. I worked for Merck for 14 years.
Thank you. Thank you. Heather?
My name is Heather Gloss. I moved to East Brunswick 15 years ago specifically for the education East Brunswick offers. In the next 2 years, I look forward to having the unique perspective of this district, having our 3 children attend Memorial, Churchill, and the high school at the same time. It'll be a complete panoramic view of the district. I graduated from the College of William & Mary with a BA in English and Religion and a master's degree in special education. I've continued my education at Rutgers with coursework in educational administration. I am extremely proud to be a lifelong educator. I've just begun my 28th year as a New Jersey public school teacher. I worked in East Brunswick at the Daisy Recreation Program for 11 years and found that to be a life-changing event. I've been a PTA volunteer in our schools. I've enjoyed volunteering between Halloween celebrations and being so proud of the busters at Fairview. I feed my own passion for continually growing by creating and providing staff development within the district where I work, as well as other districts.
Thank you. Kurt?
Good evening. I'm glad everybody came out even on a school night. My name is Kurt Phillip, and I was been born and raised in New Jersey. My wife and I are residents of East Brunswick for 20 years. I'm the proud father of 2 children in our school district. One is actually in the high school, and the other one's in Churchill, and they've been in our school district since kindergarten. My wife and I were part of the Chittick family. We enjoyed the PTA. We enjoyed doing the events in the PTA, from class trips, high school, the ice cream socials, listen to the orchestra performances, and we're turning the page now, and now we're enjoying track and field and the band, color guard supporters. My wife's a registered nurse. I'm a certified public accountant in public practice for 22 years. I hold a bachelor's degree in science in accounting and the additional New Jersey state license of a PSA, which is the public school accountant.
Thank you. Mark?
Good evening. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Mark Sismar. I was born and raised here in East Brunswick and proud of it. I attended school here from kindergarten to 12th grade, and as an adult learner, I went back to college at 40. I finished my bachelor's and master's with a 4.0 in both, and I base that on my foundation that I received here from the excellent staff that we have here in East Brunswick. I served for 26 years as a police officer from East Brunswick, 7 of which I got to work in the schools as the DARE officer, and I was commonly referred to, and still to this day, as Officer Mark. I currently serve as chairperson of security. I serve on finance, human resources, negotiations, and buildings and grounds. Proud to be a former student, a former staff member, and now a board member. And I bring all that expertise to the table to watch every dollar spent, because it's the taxpayers' dollars, not mine. And we always put the children first. That's the answer to every question. What's best for our children? Thank you.
Thank you. Wissam?
Good evening, East Brunswick residents and EBEA staff. My name is Wissam Berjawi. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a community servant. I'm a member of the East Brunswick Zoning Board, along with the Re-Advisory Committee for the Redevelopment Zone. I'm also a volunteer at the school PTA, along with a community prison for youth to help rehabilitate them. I'm also a financial director of sales at a financial institution, along with I'm passionate about empowering our children for their lifelong career. Thank you.
Thank you. First question will go to Heather, and then we'll go right down the row. The candidates know they don't have to answer all questions, and they can go back and re-answer a question because your time frame is 1.5 minutes. First question for everyone if you'd like to answer, but Heather, you're first. In 2017-2018 school year, the state for the first time in a decade changed the school funding formula. They gave growth enrollment districts more money because of the adequacy needed for the additional student populations. If East Brunswick was to continue, and it's a 7-year program, so the answer is they will continue to keep receiving more state aid each and every year for the next 6 years, how do you see yourself spending that money as a Board of Education member going forward? What are your priorities?
I believe the budget for the Board of Education seems so very large when we look at the actual numbers. So much of the budget is actually fixed. I believe it's only 85, or it's actually 85% of the budget is fixed. So we have very little room for what we get to pick and choose. And the board has a strategic plan, I'm aware, that has to be for both technology and infrastructure. East Brunswick needs to keep its eye towards both. I think that the move at the high school to integrate the one-to-one technology this year for 10th, 11th, and 12th grade was a really wise choice. I think that that alleviates costs elsewhere. If you move to one-to-one technology, the students don't need as many textbooks replaced. So the move in one direction for 21st century learning is helpful to alleviate another cost. I also think, of course, I'm sure that the board's long-term plans for the buildings would absorb a great deal of that money. Some of our buildings are in need of repairs. Some of our buildings are extraordinary, setting our standards. Obviously, Memorial, Hammersholt, Central Schools have extremely gorgeous facilities, and I think the extra money should be used, or the incoming money should be used to bring the other schools up to that standard.
Thank you. Kurt, same question?
The East Brunswick budget is hard because it's a lot of dedicated people to come up with the budget. It's not an easy process. It takes a lot of dedicated people to do a good job of it. The budget will fluctuate from time to time. In a larger sense of what priorities are, I think that there should be a comfortable and learning environment. There should be air conditioning. There should be heat when children are learning. My priority would be to make a comfortable environment no matter what school it is. My second priority is, unfortunately, we're in a time where we have to think of safety. The security of our buildings are utmost important, and we live in a time where we have to constantly think of that. So if there's money to be allocated, it should be a larger sense of what the national need is going to be, rather than just something that I would need or want at that moment.
Thank you. Mark?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Heather said. I mean, that was a fantastic answer. You know, we hear this term 21st century learning, and it's technology, but it's also space. You know, we're getting away from the conventional desk where a child sits there by themselves. There's collaboration that goes on, and with that, we've had some classrooms where we can develop spaces where they can really learn, they can collaborate, and, you know, use their minds besides sitting behind this single desk with a single chair. It's fantastic to see the growth that's going on. And you have to anticipate what's coming in the future. The one-on-one devices at the high school have been very fantastic, and they're using the Canvas program, which translates into a lot of the colleges. So we're preparing them to be young adults that are going to be ready for this world. You know, let's bring all kinds of ideas to the table. Let's think outside the box. Forget about the box. I don't even want to think about outside the box. Let's forget about the box. Let's see what our children need to have them succeed in the future. So if we have extra money for things like that, fantastic. And yes, there are fixed costs, which is a huge portion of the budget, and security is important. But as a security expert, I don't just dump a bunch of money into security. Everything that comes across my desk on the security committee, we still look at costs. We want the children to be safe, we want them to be prepared for the future, and we want them to learn the best that they can here in a wonderful district from our staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Wissam, same question?
Well, it's kind of tough. It seems like they read my literature, but I mean, echoing along the same lines, but really to focus in on 21st century learning. I mean, we talk about the laptops in the high school, which is great. However, in my opinion, we're 10 years too late on that, right? We can't wait for technology and then after it gets, the whole world's passed us by, we want to give everybody laptops. You know, people don't use laptops as much anymore. And so we need to be forward thinking. And with that, I think we should put some money and resources into STEM facilities and laboratories so that children can learn. Depending on how each child learns is differently, right? And because of that, we want to make sure we have all the different departments for them to learn with. Let them, after reading Jack and the Beanstalk, let them go ahead and develop a beanstalk in a house and test it out and put some wind to it, see if there's some stability to it. You know, this is how kids retain things, not just by regurgitating it or such. A tablet is great, but you're not going to be able to teach them. If so, just put them in front of YouTube and let them watch instructional videos all day. That's not what the school's about. Thank you.
Thank you. Li Wu?
I'm so glad both Heather and Mark like the one-on-one program. I'm the technology committee chairperson for last 2 years. I'm a big pusher for that project, and I'm so glad the community likes it. So education is about teacher, about our students. If I have extra money, I will use it to retain the best teacher in this state for our school district. That's why when I was the negotiation team member with the East Brunswick Principal and the Supervisor Association, I try my best to give whatever I can to retain the best teacher, because teacher is the cornerstone of East Brunswick Public School. I want to retain the best because they are the guarantor for our future. Thank you.
Let me do a follow-up to this, because the budget is the cornerstone of the costs of property taxpayers in East Brunswick, as it is in every one of the other 635 school districts throughout the state of New Jersey. A few years ago, legislation was passed into law that took the public's vote out of budgets and an April voting for board candidates and moved everything to what can be considered, quote-unquote, nonpartisan elections in November, though it's questionable whether they really are nonpartisan. But the bigger question, and the one I'd like you to focus on, is if a school district doesn't budget to cap, which is 2%, no vote goes to the public. Historically, East Brunswick has gone at least a half a point below the 2% cap, which means we have less and less money as a baseline each and every year, and we have more projects chasing less money for more need. And over the last few years, key programs and staff have been reduced. Media at the secondary level, a little bit of a tweak in the arts, secretaries here and there in some of the buildings are not retained. And overall, it has a diminution on the quality and the effectiveness of the overall breadth and scope of education in East Brunswick. So my question to board members, starting with Kurt, and not everybody has to answer the question, it's up to you, but we'll start with Kurt. Should the Board of Education budget to cap, go to 2%? You could go higher. If you go higher, you have to take it to a public vote. What is your sensibility about that?
Well, before you moved the election to November, there was an idea that you had to go to a referendum on everything over the budget. 2% was just given to the Board of Ed to move the election over. The budget itself has been looked at, reasoned, and data is collected for what you spend the budget on. You'd have to be able to explain if one of the priorities is necessary to go to the 2% cap. I'm not wedded to any number. I don't think that the board should come below 2. They should go above 2. I look at all of the priorities and weigh them against what we should be doing. So you'll have my commitment to give fair, clear, comprehensive budgets moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, do you want to weigh in?
Sure. You know, I've heard both sides of it, and I've said it before. You know, realistically, you know, I'd like to drive it to a zero, but that's not going to happen. You know, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Just to drive it to 2 because we can is not the thing to do if it's not what we need to do. You know, and I take a little bit of exception to the thing that our education or the staff has been, I don't want to use the wrong word, but affected by it. I think our staff is fantastic. Our kids are performing at a high level. We watch it every day. And, you know, I wish I could, you know, some of the things on finance, the small costs we look at, and the pain we had in getting rid of some of the secretaries and the support professionals that happened in this last budget. But there's ever-changing costs. People don't realize with all the costs that are involved and the population that's coming in at a 30% special education population in town and retaining the best staff. I agree with some of the answers up here. You know, we want to retain the best staff and offer as much as we can, but it's a balance between everybody has to go to work every day and they're sweating to make their tax payments. So I toil over this and it hurts every time we have to make a cut and every time I have to raise your taxes. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Husan?
Sure. You know, before we talk about raising the taxes, I think there's things that we can do to cut some of the costs, right? That's first off. I mean, preventive maintenance at the schools, predictive maintenance at the schools, putting technology in place that gives us feedback on how the machinery is working, how the HVAC system is working, what might bust ahead of time before the leaks actually happen. You know, these are things we can put in place that will save a few $1 million a year. Then we can put them back into the programs and such. That's what we need to do. Raising taxes is an option, but only a dire need if be. And so we need to be cognizant of how we're spending the money. You know, there was a research that was out that showed that 60% of software invested by the schools are not used. And that goes out to be millions of dollars a year as well. So we need to be forward thinking on if we're actually going to be using these kind of technologies, these kind of softwares, and then go ahead and purchase them. If not, let's pass on them. We don't need to have the latest shiny trinket that's out there because we have it in the budget. If we have something, let's put it towards program, let's put it towards staff and administrative raises and such. Thank you.
Thank you. Li Wu?
So budget is a very big topic. So this year we have more than $150 million budget. But to be honest with you, it's never enough. We have so many needs. Students have their own need. Teachers have their own need. But as a Board of Education member, it's our responsibility to spend every penny wisely. This is the only way we can control our budget from keep going up. So we're doing everything we can. So for example, we can if they reduce the printing, that will save us a few $1,000s a year. And as a technology committee chairman, I keep telling the directors, try anything first before you invest your money there. Because you try, you know if we really like it, it will be really useful for us. Most of the time, if we don't like it, our students still experience the new technology, and at the end, the companies leave those equipment for us, so we'll have some free stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, last word.
I believe that this board has been very fiscally conservative, and I applaud them for it. I believe keeping the budget to the 2% cap is good. I am always opposed to reductions in staff purely for the reason that schools live and breathe by their students and their staff. You can have the nicest sound system and the best looking facility, but without engaged, dedicated, and inspired staff, there's nothing there for your students. So while I know that the budget is very difficult to hammer out, and I know that keeping it at that 2% is very difficult, I think it's doable. I think that's where the work and the ethic of the board comes in. I think the idea always has to be, though, to provide the security of their jobs to the staff and the support staff so that they can focus on what's most important, the children in the district.
Thank you. Mark, let me start with you with this question.
Sure.
Lots of communities, East Brunswick being part of that community of public schools, don't feel that there's a there connection between Board of Education activities, efforts, programs, meetings, and a lookout into the community as a public relations issue. Do you see a need to increase the public relations between yourself as a board member and the community at large to sell programs, be a cheerleader, and become more actively involved in the community as a member of the board as the totality in selling issues to the community because they are right, they are progressive, it is what is needed to maintain the great quality schools in East Brunswick?
Well, let's start with getting involved in the community. Being born and raised here, working here for 26 years as an officer, 5 years in the school system at Hammersholt, and now serving on the board, I love being out there and getting involved with the community and listening to what the community has to say. But with that comes a balance. You have to understand that the Board of Education is a consensus body of 9 members. There's no one member that can make anything happen or guarantee anything to happen, nor should they say that to a member of the public. Sometimes I sit up there on the dais, and you have to realize the public portion of our meeting is for the public to speak, not for us to engage back and forth and have a debate with them. We listen to them. Some of the stuff that was brought up to us, I mean, we absorb it, we bring it, and we think about it when we go home. I think about it when I'm sleeping at night sometimes, what's going on, and I toil with it. So there are portions, like I said, when we're sitting up on the dais where it may seem cold, but you're going to see me at the local supermarket. You're going to see me at the local sports field, coaching, doing other types of activities in the town. I know people here for generations that remember me as a kid, remember me when I taught their child, and now I'm serving on the board. So absolutely, whatever we can do to get out there with the public and increase public relations is fantastic. But just be aware, there are times when it may seem cold, when we can't answer you right back from up there on the dais. But we listen to every email, everything that's stated in the meetings, and everything that comes our way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hussam, do you want to tackle the same question?
Well, I'm not on the board yet, but if I
If
was...
you were.
If I were on the board, I would certainly communicate with the community. I do that on a daily basis in all respects. I mean, I live in East Brunswick, I work in East Brunswick, I work out in East Brunswick, I'm always in town. I'm very easy to get a hold of, and I think it's important for the board to communicate back to the parents and to the staff to get feedback on what's going on and how we can continuously work together to improve our school system. I think East Brunswick has an excellent school system, second to none, but there's ways we can always improve upon that. And so communicating better with the community on what's going on the board level, I think would certainly help improve that reputation.
Thank you. Li Wu, you want to?
Yes. So 3 years ago, I was elected. I'm elected to listen. If I'm re-elected, I will continue listen your voice. Anybody, if you have anything, I'm the big listener. I'm a big fan for community service. I strongly believe our parents, East Bronx parents, have very good talent pool. I want the parents can contribute to our school district to bring their experience, their knowledge to our school children. There are so many doctors, there are so many lawyers, there are so many engineers living in East Brunswick. They are very precious resource we can have. So I'm strongly supported to start to build a good communication, to good relationship with the parents, get them involved, because without their help, our teachers will face a lot more challenge. With their help, we can prepare our students a lot better for their future, because when our students leave our school, they will face the challenge, competition with other school graduates and graduates from other countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
I think that the board's accessibility is difficult sometimes to see. When you sit in a board meeting, it does seem like the conversation is very one way. Although I do really enjoy that they've included students to sit in the board from the high school. But I think that the focus on a relationship between the board and the community may not be where the focus is best served. I think that conversation should be between the schools and the community. Bring the parents into the schools more to highlight that relationship. I know that there are amazing things going on at the high school. I know the back to school night, there were amazing displays. the parents going into the schools and having the conversations there, those needs will trickle up to the board. The board is there not to micromanage. Really, the voices need to be heard within the schools. That being said, I'm a resident as well. I'm a mother of 3. I'm the proud spouse of a firefighter. We are all over town. I more often can be found on the lacrosse field and at the high school at 7 o'clock in the morning than I can at my own house. So I think it's a combination of being accessible and listening, but also realizing that the Board of Ed is probably not where the focus belongs. It's on the schools and on the students. Thank you.
Thank you. Kurt, last word?
I would not have run for the Board of Education if I didn't believe in it. I enjoy being an advocate for the school system, no matter where or what capacity I have. Even if I'm elected to the Board of Education, I think I still retain the best headline would probably be, you're still a parent. And I think that I like to take the temperature of the community to begin with. I believe I'm accessible. I believe as far as a public relations, I think part of the public relations have to be sold. If you explain carefully what we need to do for the Board of Education and work together with the opinions that are in the public, I think we come to consensus answers. So if it's anything, if we all come together and we listen to the board and decide on the board level, then I think we make a better community. Thank you.
Thank you. 1995, the state of New Jersey opened up a new educational portal. It was called charter schools. They were conceived to supplement, not to supplant, the normal traditional schools. Now in 2019-2020 school year, they have really grown much further than that. Some people will criticize them and say they are actually public-private schools. They are funded with public school dollars. 90% of their budget comes from the traditional Board of Education of East Brunswick. In the next 2 years, the cycle in Middlesex County will expand grade levels of all the surrounding charter schools that have an impact on East Brunswick students, giving parents broader choices, not only elementary school, but now secondary school, which could rob students from the traditional public school and certainly takes dollars out of your normal budget to be fettered into charter schools because that's the law. Do you have an opinion on this process, and how would you mitigate the constant loss of dollars to charter schools at the behest of the traditional school district that you're serving on? Because Board of Education candidates or trustees in a charter school are not elected by the citizens of their community, but appointed by the trustees and directors of that charter school. So the transparency is not quite the same, but the dollar loss is getting larger and larger each year. Wissam, any comments, any position, any thoughts?
Sure. I mean, when it comes to the charter schools, as the public school board member, you are not allowed, or you cannot stop that from happening. So by complaining about it doesn't change the outcome. It's a federal law. You have to put the money there. Okay, so it's not, okay, let's all 9 board members vote. Do we want to give them the money or we don't? It doesn't work that way. So we don't have a choice. So discussing whether to have it exist or not is not the point. But then we have to be more creative on how do we as a public school, as a school district, get more money. And this goes back to, once again, modernizing our schools, cutting costs, being more efficient. If we modernize the schools and we modernize the facilities, then we could rent them out. Then we can have clubs come and use them and pay for them, organizations, non-for-profits. This is how we're going to generate money. This is what we need to be thinking about. But to be thinking about the charter school taking our money and spending it, we can't do anything about it. So to waste some breath on it is pointless at this point. Let's be creative on how we can work together to grow our revenue outside of the normal scope of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Lee Wu, do you want to answer the same question?
Yes. So as a lawyer, I know that nobody is above the law. The state has the law, so the Board of Education has to act under the law. So I heard so many complaints about the charter school because they use the budget, most of the budget is come from our public school, it's your tax dollars. Since as a board member, even as a Board of Education, there's no way we can change the situation. I believe the charter school will be here for some time. So in order to mitigate the impact to the public school, I believe we should reach out to cooperate with the charter school. We can share service to lower the cost, to make everything efficient. I believe that's the better way to solve the current problem. And the law is the law. The Board of Education has to follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather, did you want to respond?
I do.
Okay, and then Kurt, obviously.
I agree that arguing the point of charter schools is moot. It is the law, and the Board of Education has no say to change the existence of the charter schools. But I disagree with the idea that we can't think about them. I think it is worth noting that for the first time in years, as an educator in public schools, I always looked at where New Jersey was ranked in the country and always looked at Massachusetts and ground my teeth a little as we came in behind them year after year. And this was the first time I'd ever seen New Jersey come in ahead of Massachusetts. So by some rankings, we were actually first in the nation this year for public schools. And then you look at where East Brunswick sits within New Jersey. And by many rankings, we're about 25th in the state. I think that rather than not thinking about the charter schools, we need to think about promoting the excellence in our public school system. What we have is something that's amazing. We really should, there should be no competition between us and the charter schools that are here. Yes, they exist, but I think they could draw fewer and fewer students in comparison to what we have going on in the public schools here.
Thank you. Kurt, last word.
I was never a big fan of the charter schools for the fact of governance. I felt that the Board of Education should have the oversight on, you are asking the Board of Education to give tax dollars to the charter school, and you're not giving the Board of Education any review of their financial statements, any idea of what the more normal Board of Education would do in their own schools. So you're telling the Board of Education to give them the money, and you'll trust them to do what the Board of Education may not want to do for their own schools. So I feel that the governance should be brought back to the Board of Education, and I believe that there are enrollments requirements that the schools, charter schools, have to be held to. I think we should encourage those rules to be enforced, and if we do that, you'll realize some of the charter schools have never made their requirements. Thank you.
Kurt had the last word, but Mark will have the last word.
Quick word, not in East Brunswick. You know, there is a need for charter schools in certain communities, not in East Brunswick. I'm proud of what goes on here since I was a little kid in the school system. And although as a board member, Mark Sismar's hands are tied, as a person, those that know me, you tie my hands, given the opportunity, there still would be a fight. Look at the audience. Grow this audience to the people in New Jersey. These lawmakers that come down with these laws are elected by the people from the state of New Jersey. Can change happen? Yeah, but it's not going to be from a consensus of 9 board members. It's from all the members of New Jersey to say certain communities do not need our taxpayer dollars going into something like that. Certain communities do, but I'll end it again. I don't believe it belongs in East Brunswick. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Wu, I'm going to start with you with this question, and then after this, we're going to change the rules of engagement. This question will go to everybody on the panel. With so few dollars chasing so many needs in every school district, obviously including yours, do you think greater shared services with East Brunswick Municipality, the County of Middlesex, should be investigated? Is at its pinnacle, or is there more that can be done to alleviate the tax burden on property taxes and enhance the educational value for the students?
I'm a big fan for the shared service. So we approved a agreement with the East Brunswick Township to share the surface to spray the brine during the winter time. I strongly believe there is no need to have duplicate systems existing in East Brunswick. Every dollar we saved is your tax dollars, because East Brunswick Board of Education Public School is East Brunswick, and East Brunswick Township is East Brunswick. We need to work together. We need to share every resource we have to lower down our cost. That is the best way to spend our tax dollars more efficiently. So I'm the big fan for the shared service.
Thank you. Heather, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I would like to concur briefly. I do think that shared services are invaluable. There are places you can see within the township where the township has the service, the school district has the service. There's duplication, and there's places where these services can be shared, tax dollars can be saved. There's places to alleviate cost within the district. I agree.
Thank you. Kurt?
I'll be brief, very brief, because I believe in shared services, but if I'm an advocate for the school system, it should benefit the school system, because we're here for the shared service to lower our budget, and why would we do something that the shared service would not benefit the East Brunswick school system? Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Simple answer is yes. Look in the audience. We have the mayor and 3 of the council members here. And if there's a 4th or 5th council member here, I got these lights in my eyes, so I can't see right now, so I apologize. And Leroy, you stole a little bit of my thunder. I said that when I was interviewing for the Board of Education. There's East Brunswick Board of Education and East Brunswick Township. The same 2 words are in front of both. East Brunswick. You know, there are areas, we've done it a little bit with security. There's a lot of in-kind costs that go on behind the scenes that people don't see. We've done it with technology, and you know, every committee looks to how can we work with the township. We meet with the mayor, and we look at ways that we can combine services. And I think it's, where's my science teachers, when something's mutually beneficial to each other here, okay? That's what we try to look for, you know, something that would be mutually beneficial to somebody. That's nature, and that's what we can do in government, is be mutually benefit. Because guess what? Doesn't matter which side it comes from, it's all coming from your taxpayer pockets. So if we can work together to reduce either side, we're doing our job. Thank you.
Thank you. Wissam?
Yes, I mean, certainly I agree with the shared services, whether it be with the township or with the county. I mean, being efficient is what we need to do in order to save taxpayer dollars, but along with saving the taxpayer dollars, we can reinvest it into the schools. So we have to find ways to work together. I mean, we are blessed to have a community that does work together, a township, a mayor, a council that works and very open-minded and very giving back. And so they welcome us to work with them, and you know, it is upon us to work together so that we can all benefit together. Because at the end of the day, the residents are affected by the taxes, whether if they have school children or not. You know, from going around town and speaking with the residents, you know, some of them say, oh, my kids aren't in school anymore, why do I care, right? But they're invested in this town, whether you have children or not. And so by having shared services and for those taxpayers to get a benefit as well, I think it's mutually beneficial. So, yes.
Thank you. Going to change the model of asking questions. There's an open toss-up question. Anybody who wants to answer it can. If you all want to answer it, please just raise your hand and I'll call on you. 2018-2019, Board of Education of East Brunswick proposed to change the cycle program at Hammershaw Middle School, reducing the time that students would spend studying the arts to enhance additional instructional time for math. How do you feel about this idea? Good, bad, indifferent, different proposal, different thought process? Kurt, hand was up first.
I spoke at the board for this reason. I felt that, and I was contacted by a few parents who actually made their schedules, because, you know, when you're a parent in the area, they ask your advice for when your children, what classes they enjoyed. And parents actually contacted me and they asked me what classes my kids enjoyed. So when I gave them my opinion and stuff like that, they made their schedules out. And then somewhere when the budget was passed, they were told that those classes are not available because the curriculum was going to change. I'm not sure where the communication was. I'm not sure if it was the idea of bad timing, but there should have been a better explanation of what happened. I believe that curriculum should be discussed among a lot of changes. If it's a big curriculum change, there should be a public input. And I hope that that will not happen again.
Thank you. Anyone else like to answer the question? Wissam?
So I definitely think that, removing the arts and putting in some additional math time wasn't the best thing to do. I mean, every child learns differently and appreciates different subjects differently. And so while math is extremely important, I am a finance major and do appreciate math, but I do understand the importance of the arts. And so we must keep that there and not, switch that out. I mean, in certain things we need to add some more time to as well, such as outdoor recess. I mean, we talk about health and wellness, but we don't give our children enough time to go ahead and play outside, along with starting the day very early. For some schools, they start at 7 o'clock. I mean, research has shown that you need to start classes about an hour later because high schoolers, no matter what time they start in the morning, they're sleeping in late anyway, right? And so we need to look at these schedules a little bit better, these coursework better as well, and to see how our children will learn in a better environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Heather?
Yeah, I would like
Everybody
to-
wants to weigh in. Heather?
I would like to say that I'm not entirely sure what happened with the art cycles and the math program this year. But what I do, I'm not entirely sure, is, and I believe that there was a great deal of discussion in closed session, not entirely sure because I don't know. But there was a great deal that seemed to go on in closed session. I think the part that was valuable about that, first let me say I'm very much in favor of the arts. I spent a great deal of my formative education in an art studio, being very grateful it was there. And I think the arts are the soul of the school. But I think there was a benefit to be had in this moment in time in East Brunswick because there were a great many parents that I had never heard talk about going to the Board of Education meetings, that had never watched them, that were not really involved, that became very involved very quickly. They wanted to come out, they wanted to find out what was going on, they wanted to speak up for their children. And I think that that moment in time was valuable for us. I know that I had neighbors and friends that never would have considered going to a Board of Ed meeting, but they were deeply concerned. The cycle programs were valuable to their children. I think the issue was resolved successfully, but I did think that moment was notable because it got people out into the meetings and talking where they needed to be.
Thank you. Mark, you wanted to weigh in?
Yes, sir. There's a process for things. When this went out to social media, and I'll leave it at that, it was still in the process. There was a lot of misinformation that was out there, which I experienced with a couple things sitting up on the dais this year. If you think we're, hiding something, we're not transparent, that's not true. Especially something where there's a large change in the curriculum. We as 9 people, and we all come from varied backgrounds, we're not going to be the end-all. We're the only ones that look at it and decide it. We look to the professionals that we have hired, that your tax dollars support, and they're excellent professionals. It was in the planning stages, without getting deep into it. It was in the planning stages. And I don't want to minimize it by using the analogy of a house, but I'm not even quite sure that the foundation was dry on building a program to change the future. And yes, we do value the arts. Academics, athletics, and the arts, it's on our patch. We don't just put it there for window dressing, and it's, I don't want to get deep into the details, but it was a work in progress. It wasn't something that was settled. And I'm also glad to embrace the passion that our residents had to come and voice their opinions, and we listened for hours, and we took it in, and we do listen every time.
Thank you.
So
Lee
thank
Wu.
On March 28 this year, more than 300 parents showed up for the Board of Education meeting. I heard, but I didn't know where to get the misinformation. No decision was made to reduce or eliminate the art. no decision was made to increase the math curriculum. I don't know where they got this misinformation. When I got the note that, oh, people are talking about this on Facebook as a board member, I don't know who made the decision. So I believe there is miscommunication or misinformation there. So, but your voice was clearly heard. As Board of Education, we have the responsibility to evaluate every curriculum, art, math, sports, everything. It's our responsibility because the world is changing. And I just want to let you know that we, a group of 9 volunteers, we are hear your voice. We're doing our job. We're doing our diligent job to make sure our East Brunswick student is well prepared for the future.
Thank you. It was said earlier on the panel that maybe changing the starting time at the high school may be a good idea. Anybody want to weigh in on it's been debated in many school districts. Some are weighing and have done it for this school term, others have not. Any thoughts about changing the hours of the high school and then maybe retrofitting other grade levels around bus schedules? Huisan, you raised it earlier. You have first crack.
Thank you. I mean, it's important to take into account the student's life when making these decisions, whether it's a curriculum, whether it's transportation, whether it's the time school starts and ends. And 7 o'clock is extremely early for school to start for 2 reasons. First off, usually high schoolers don't sleep early. They don't sleep 8 o'clock or even 9 o'clock where you can put your elementary child to sleep. So they sleep later, 11, 12, 1 o'clock, and they have to wake up. They usually wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And you're breaking up a family time right there because most other people in the household aren't waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And the child has to get up, get ready, eat breakfast by him or herself, and then go to school all sleepy and groggy. And then they leave earlier. They leave at 2 o'clock or so. Why not make it an hour later? They finish an hour later, and the child is going to perform better in school. So I'm very much in favor of starting an hour later for the high schoolers, and I don't think any school should start prior to 8 o'clock.
Li Wu?
So students' health condition is always in my heart. I have 3 children, all are East Brunswick public school students. But for I'm the Transportation Committee chairperson. I have been evaluated the starting time, but I want everyone here to know that we have more than 680 bus lines running every day. And it's very difficult for us to find a qualified bus driver now. So it's not easy to change the time, but when we decide the school starting time, we have to think about the sports activity they will have after class. And we have to find out if we have any qualified bus driver. We have to hear the input from the labor union. But I can tell you that, rescheduling the starting time is in my mind, and it's always, and I'm pushing very hard. Hopefully, you can see some change very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
As a high school teacher who also starts at that very early hour, I agree. It's a huge issue. Looking at sleepy faces for the past 28 years, it's a very difficult thing for high school students. I'd also like to say that I often tell my students that they are going through the same growth period that they did about the time when they were a toddler and require the same amount of sleep as they did then. They just don't get it. The difficulties for the school, though, are abundant. It's not just, obviously I agree with Li Wu, the busing issue is enormous. Not only is there a shortage of qualified drivers, but schools that reuse the buses from the elementary schools and the middle schools and the high schools, and they cycle them through. If you change the high school start time, that affects everyone. So what do you do for more children for morning care at the elementary level? Or if the elementary schools get out earlier, what do you do for aftercare? it becomes a complex problem. But it becomes a larger statewide issue if we want our students to be able to compete in athletics against other schools. If the entire state doesn't move in this direction, it's very difficult for them to compete. If we're getting out later, what do our athletes do? This impacts students for college. So I totally think it's worth investigating. I think it's something that should be a statewide discussion, truthfully. I do think they need to start later, but we have to start later with other schools as well.
Please, Kurt.
I agree that having two teenage children waking up at 7 a.m., there have been easier times to do it. I'll tell you the truth that it's true. With the logistics of really getting the school time in East Brunswick analyzed, it really is a statewide issue. We'd have to get all the other schools for the idea of their after clubs and athletics to coincide with our change with their change. Do I think it's possible? Anything should be possible, but there should be a few studies to see if there's a buy-in with other schools or even the schools that we interact with. Possibly they may want to change at the same time we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I'll make it short. I thought there was great answers up here, and I think it's fantastic that we are talking about it. And I'm going to steal one of Heather's words I used years ago as a police officer. Let's investigate it. I don't have the answers to everything. I'm not an expert in everything, but the discussion is going on. People are looking at it. Let's look to have the experts weigh in and other people that know a lot more than me about the subject, to be honest with you, to weigh in. And let's talk about it. Let's investigate it. I think that's fantastic.
Okay, thank you. Open question. East Brunswick's great public schools are both a blessing and a curse. They're a blessing in that people move to East Brunswick for the outstanding quality schools. There's a curse because you're starting to become extremely overcrowded, and your class sizes at certain grade levels are starting to exceed what normal educational experts would say would be optimum class size. What do you see as the way forward to deal with the enrollment increases that are starting to squeeze the educational opportunities for children? Open question. Wissam?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely a blessing to have this problem of increased enrollment. It is the reason why me and my wife have chosen to live in East Brunswick for the excellent school district. So it is not a surprise that many others or people who have lived here for generations have come here for. And so with the increased enrollment, I think once again, we need to be forward thinking in our planning and in our modernizing our buildings to be more flexible, to have different workstations, to have the capacity to adjust the sizes or what is done in the classrooms to accommodate if we have a continued enrollment increase. If we don't look to maybe possibly building additional facilities to house another school, then we might have students in trailers learning, right? Because in the elementary schools, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, we do have an influx of students and we are at that bottleneck. So we need to have a solution, and we're gonna have more people moving in. We do have more housing coming in. We need to make sure that we're prepared for it, and without the housing, we still have an influx of students. So burying our head in the sand isn't gonna make the problem go away. We do need to look at expanding our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kurt?
The idea was just the idea of having a larger class size. But having more students inside the class size is a larger picture for facilities, hiring of the teachers, and future demands that would be resulting for the class sizes going through all the grades. So in reality, it's a good thing to have. I don't think that we should not worry about it, but we should plan and have a plan for not just the immediate increase in students, but for a future plan also. And it's not just the idea of students coming into the classroom, it's a larger picture of what happens to the school system overall. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
I would just like to say that it's obviously a fact. You know, we are having an influx of new students, and East Brunswick reputation draws families, as it should. I mean, it's why we came, it's why others come. But we should never lose sight of the fact that student-to-teacher ratio being low has a direct correlation on student success. If we are aimed at an excellence in education for our students, we do need to keep class sizes small and that positive student-to-teacher ratio. So I do think that what has been said is wise. We need to look at increasing our facilities. We need to look at hiring of more staff to be prepared for the increased class sizes that are coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Li Wu?
So how to balance the plus and the course is very, very challenging job. We have 2% budget cap. So that means if we need to get new building, how much property tax you are going to pay? Are the voters, you guys are happy? Of course, most people are not happy. So I think it's very difficult to solve the problem. And to be honest with you, I have been thinking about this issue for many, many years, and I don't have a clear resolution for that. But we can do some small things little by little. For example, our administrators now are screening every enrollment. So we did cut a few students that living in other townships because they say East Brunswick is so good. So I'm going to sneak in to be an East Brunswick public school student. So we can solve, this is a small way to solve the problem. But eventually, you know, our class size will increase if we are doing better. But compared with the classroom in Japan, in China, our class size is very small. To be honest, you know, there are more than 80 students in China in good schools. I was told more than 60 students in Japan for good schools.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Next question is lightning round. Quick yes or no answer. Are you for or against subcontracting and privatization? Yes or no?
Yes and no.
Right down the list. Good. Right down the line. Li Wu?
Okay, yes and no. Depends on what kind of things you are going to contract out.
Okay. Heather?
No for staff and professional services, yes for other outside services.
Okay. Kurt?
I would agree. No for staff, yes for outside services.
Mark?
You can't limit that to a no, yes or no question, so I'll pass on that question.
Okay. Wissam?
I would say no to staff, but yes to outside services.
Okay, thank you. Special education, a big cost driver and something that is done very, very well in this school district. But if you were to make improvements and see needs, what would they be for improvements in the special education program of this district? Anyone? Heather?
As a special educator, or a long history of being a special educator, I would say the district does a phenomenal job. I spent 11 years working at the DAISY program, and I've seen students from all ends of the spectrum within East Brunswick and the services they've received. I think the place that East Brunswick has excelled is they offer a full spectrum of services. I think sometimes in education, trend swings. You know, we'll have inclusion for everyone. We'll send everyone to smaller programs. And I think East Brunswick does a nice job of providing a full spectrum of services. I do think the place where we spend the most is in out-of-district placements. I think investigating programs to bring some of the out-of-district students back, if that can be done within the district, is an enormous money saver. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Li Wu?
So my brother and his family are living in California. My sister-in-law told me that, you know what? My friends with special needs children, they are going to move to East Brunswick, move to New Jersey, because you guys are providing the best special education in this country. But the problem is, those students come up with huge price tag. I think, so one thing is we should try our best to keep our students inside school district. By doing so, we have to provide a full spectrum service to keep as many students inside our school district as possible. That is the only way we can reduce the cost. Normally, if you send one student out of school district to a cost, some students may cost more than $100,000 a year. So, but, we are obligated to provide whatever those students need is the law. Board of Education has to follow the law. So for most of the situation, we have no answer for that.
Thank you. Mark, did I see your hand up?
Kurt, has something?
Kurt, I'm sorry.
I served on the Board of Education from 2010 and 2016, and I'll tell you that the best education I ever had was on special education. I visited facilities. I wanted to know why and how we provide for our children. I was given a wonderful education in the spectrum, the classification of children, what works, what doesn't work inside district, and what we do best in East Brunswick for all of our students. I'm a supporter of our special education. I believe we do a wonderful job for our special education, and hopefully we can bring more for the outer district children. They do, it seems as if that is the bigger, larger case of the expense, and if we could provide it, we could provide it cheaper in East Brunswick, hopefully. Thank you.
Anyone else? No one? Okay. Make the assumption that you've just been elected to the Board of Education, either as a returning incumbent or as an insurgent candidate. What is the issue that you are going to gravitate to first in improving the public schools of East Brunswick? What's your go-to move as a member of the Board of Education? What's your number one priority? Hassan?
My number one priority would be to modernize the buildings and facilities. I think the learning environment for the students needs to be conducive all around to their abilities to learn in a comfortable environment. Some of the schools, there's leaks, there's mold, there's cockroaches running around, there's heating and AC issues. In those kind of environment, the children, as well as the teachers, don't learn. The teachers aren't able to teach to the best of their abilities, and the student isn't able to learn to the best of their ability. I mean, think about it yourself. If you were traveling and you went to a 4-star hotel, you would be more relaxed and more open to learning. If you're put in a 1-star hotel, you're going to be thinking about everything around you, but not what's in front of you, right? So we need to modernize our buildings so that our staff can do better. We have better facilities to learn. We have better STEM curriculums for our children to learn, more hands-on learning. This is important, and I do think that we need to, for the high schoolers, put some digital literacy in place. This is very important. I don't think we give our high schoolers enough preparation for real life. We have to teach them how to go ahead and interview, right? Not just for college interviews to get in, but also for their first jobs. How to have a LinkedIn profile. What does that mean? So we need to do better and modernize our facilities to keep up with that.
Thank you. Let me do a quick follow-up to that. Then you would be out there advocating for a new school bond referendum in this community? Because that's what it's going to take.
So I would look at all facts and see what is proposed with the buildings, what kind of facilities, and what the cost would be. And if everything fits right, then yes, I would be. If not, no. I wouldn't just check off the box for a referendum if it's not going to be forward-thinking on what we're doing.
Okay, because one of the difficulties in all school districts, and East Brunswick is included in that mix, is that only about 26% of the population actually send their children to the schools. The rest, either the children are out or the children haven't entered yet. So your universe to pass such a referendum becomes smaller and smaller and more difficult. I think it was early 2000s, last time you did a major bond referendum in this town. And I remember the most unique thing was that Central School still had, didn't even have circuit breakers, still had fuses. Schools in Newark at least had circuit breakers. That school still had a fuse box. It was hard to believe, but still did quality education, and the result has been a new and improved building. Anyone else? Paul? Kurt, I'm sorry.
That's all right. If you remember, our community, we always say that we're unique because we're East Brunswick. We are, because I remember Memorial, when we had to replace Memorial, we went out and we got that passed. The community felt a need for it, and we really wanted to have Memorial replaced. So I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm saying that if we have explain it to public, have the public understand what we need, and if we actually have the ability to explain it, I think we could make the best pitch and see what the taxpayers say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Go to move. Li Wu?
So I'm going to answer your question. If I'm re-elected, what's my first priority? So if I'm re-elected, I will keep pushing this shared service with the township, with Middlesex County, with other school districts outside Middlesex County. By doing so, I can release the precious budget resource to retain the best teacher in our school district, to provide the best buildings to our students, to provide the most modern technology to our teachers and students. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
Well, as you were saying it, I was thinking, my mind is racing. If I was elected, what would be my first priority? And I'm thinking about, excellence in teaching, and I'm thinking about special education and 21st century learning, and obviously the facilities. And then I realized that my first priority would actually be to be a first day of school student. As a new board member, I think even with 28 years as a teacher and with a master's and postgraduate work, I think that I would have a lot to learn, a great deal to learn. I think that new board members need to hold themselves back for at least a moment to find out what happens behind the closed session, all the considerations of the board, and then move forward, educated, to be able to serve the community better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
It's a hard question to answer. Having been a new board member and coming in, everybody thought Mark's just going to be the security guy. He was a cop for 26 years. He worked in the school for 5 years. My first priority is the students. After that, let me tell you something. If you're not a multitasker, don't apply for this job, because every meeting, we do not tackle one issue. We don't spearhead one issue. We are 9 members. We all bring our talents. We all bring our passions. I'm seeing it from the 5 members up here running for office. Fantastic job, fantastic passion, and bring experiences to the table. So my priority is the children first. After that, I'm telling you, you got to be a multitasker. So be prepared.
Thank you. Before we go to closing statements, we're going to start in the opposite order with Wusan. I think the public of East Brunswick has some very difficult choices with 5 very qualified candidates, which is what every town should have. Choices are good in life, and even better when you have dedicated candidates running for a Board of Education, because they're certainly not doing it for the money, because there is none. Wusan, minute and a half if you need for a closing statement, sir.
Sure. Well, thank you for your time, everyone. I have a great deal of experience within finance. I'm the youngest member in senior management at the firm that I work at. I come with a great deal of experience. I am one of a few that can actually multitask extremely well. I am very efficient with my time. I work very well with others, and I listen to others' thoughts, so I think I would be able to communicate well with the fellow board members. I'm also very passionate about our children's education. They are our life, right? They are the next generation, and we need to make sure that we groom them for that. And so all the decisions that will be made will be based on, does it enhance the students' education? Does it prepare them for their lifelong careers? And also, do we support the staff fully at these schools? I don't believe that teachers should need to work a second or third job during the weekends or in the summertime in order to pay their household bills. So we need to make sure that we marry up those two together, an excellent education for our children while making sure that we take care of our students, staff as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, closing comments.
You know, besides being a lifelong member of the East Brunswick community, my experience comes from the role as a student, the role as a staff member, and now the role as a board member. Seeing 3 different facets of our education system here in East Brunswick, I think is invaluable to what we need to do when we go into the boardroom. I've enjoyed my time here. I continue to enjoy my time here, and I'm hoping to enjoy 3 more years of my time on the board with your support. I watch every dollar spent. It's not my money, it's the taxpayer dollars, you know? And if you saw some of the small things we looked at sometimes, or I'm asking for an anomaly that I point out when we get our packets, you would understand the passion that goes into it and how much it hurts when we have to make cuts. You know, I want to thank the NJEA and the EBEA Pride Grant Committee for giving us this opportunity tonight. And we've talked about the staff, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, you know, I was a student here, and I don't remember a new paint job on the wall. I don't remember when I got a new textbook. But I think everybody needs to look at their own memories. You probably remember a staff member that made an impact on your life. It could have been a teacher, it could have been a custodian, it could have been an aide out on the playground. You know, people are what East Brunswick's driven on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kurt, closing comments, please.
I'd like to thank everybody for their participation tonight. I did serve on the board from 2010 to 2016, and it was my pleasure to work with teachers, administrators, and support staff. I now have a desire to return to the board. When I first served to the board, there were massive cuts in education funding. My daughter was at kindergarten, and I wanted to contribute my expertise and my time for the benefit of our community. That kindergarten person is now a sophomore in the high school. My desire to return to the board is my opinion that there needs to be more transparency in the board. I believe that the increase in our student population will require qualified, experienced individuals to find financial and managerial solutions. We could debate another 2 hours about the solutions for budgeting and what do we cut and what we don't cut, but I will do my best to give you a fair, clear, comprehensive budget with full transparency to the public. I wish to support to foster the excellence in education that East Brunswick is known for, in a collaborative environment among all board members and the shareholders of our community. Let me be your voice on the Board of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Heather?
I would also like to thank the East Brunswick Education Association for this opportunity. This is an excellent night to get to know the candidates and to talk more about education in East Brunswick. Someone asked me outside why I would want to do this, that it's a great deal of time and it's a large commitment. And I was saying that I've spent my entire lifetime in education. Actually, some of my happiest memories are here in East Brunswick, working with students at Daisy. But that recently I'd found myself serving on committees in the district where I worked. I found myself on the Human Relations Committee. I found myself on school safety. I found myself writing grants to provide students with opportunities for leadership. But while that was worthwhile, I wanted to do that here. I wanted to serve the students in the community in East Brunswick. My family believes strongly in volunteerism, and I wanted to serve here. I think that fostering a growth for professional development here would definitely be something I would focus on. I think that even very much like what Mark said, you do not remember the beautiful facilities, you remember the teachers. During the time that Memorial had burned, my son was in school in South River, and that was not a pretty building, and that was not a pretty playground, it was a parking lot, and yet that was an incredible educational year for him. He looks back and he says that was a great year. It's the staff, it's the school, it's the people that make the district, and I think my commitment as a lifelong educator and someone who's committed to education will make a difference here. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee Wu, final comments.
Thank you very much for listening. And I want to thank EBEA, the Pride Committee, for this opportunity. And I want to thank all the voters who put me here as the Board of Education member for 3 years. I had the privilege, and I believe I want to tell you that I didn't fail you. So every time, Board of Education, this is really time consuming. So many times when I come back from my office, leave for the meeting, my son blocked the doorway, says, "Daddy, you didn't spend time with me." I have 3 boys, 1 6-year-old, 2 5-year-olds. I told him that, "Andrew, I have more than 8,000 children to take care of. You are just 3 of those 8,000. So I just want you, I told my son that I'm a member of this community. I devote myself to this community because I do care about East Brunswick. I urge every single one of you to come out on November 5. Please come out, please vote, please make your choice. If you can choose me, I will be very happy to give you 3 solid more years. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of questions were passed up to me. Not all of them I could ask. I already started with a list of my own questions, but that's what the meet and greet is for, which we will now move to at the entrance of the building. So you have an opportunity to ask a question that you may have passed up to myself at the dais. There's a perfect opportunity to buttonhole those candidates. On behalf of the East Brunswick Education Association, the candidates, let's give them a nice round of applause.